There we go. A little bit of a technical glitch, but we are here. We are here. Mr. Knight, where are you? Okay, hold on. Let me do something here. Well, good morning, Ray. How are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. I am doing very well.
Good stuff. Good to
What's
hear you.
going on,
Good to
man?
have you.
Can't see you, Ryan.
Let me just get Mr. Knight properly on, not just in voice tone. All right, let's do that.
I must say you
Okay,
have a
I
nice
think
picture up
we
there,
are
though.
just about ready to get Mr. Knight on. See, this is why I miss having a producer because I got to do all this stuff on my own. All right, let's do that. Okay, QR code there. All right, there we go.
Wonderful.
Almost there. Good morning, gentlemen. How we doing?
Hey, very good. Good to see you.
Good to have everyone on. How was everybody's weekend?
Weekend was really good. Yeah, I'll show you some of the adventures I was on this weekend. But good to see you, Ray.
Hey, same here, man. How you doing?
Yo, things are progressing okay. I don't know if you'll be in town. I was sending you a message about our anniversary on October 25th. So we're working on putting that together. So those that might have seen some invitations coming out, it hasn't gone out to the broader public. So if you didn't get a message from me, you aren't in a certain WhatsApp group that I've created. And it's going to go in our newsletter soon. So, because we only have very limited space. So I had to make sure ACBN supporters, especially Ray, co-founder, got the notice so that we can see who can be there, and then we're gonna send it out to the broader public. But we are live streaming it, so it will be
Mhm.
broadcast because we have some pretty exciting announcements to make. So I want to make sure that you stay tuned for that.
Okay. I will make every effort to be there, sir.
How
Yes,
many
so
years?
8 years, man. This is
Yeah. It's a long time. Time
almost as
flies
old
when
as
you're
my
having fun,
son.
man.
8 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
All right, so I want to do a little flashback.
Hmm.
Do you two remember the first time you met to talk about ACBN?
Oh, yeah. It's
Oh,
carved in our memories. We can never forget that experience. Come on, Ryan.
oh
Ryan tells
yeah.
the story very often.
Yeah, and it
That is
was the first
etched
time
in
I
our
ever
memories.
met Ray. Yeah, the breakfast with no breakfast.
What? What's
Oh
all this
man,
about?
I love ackee and saltfish. It's one of my favorite things to eat. So when I saw the invite, this Jamaican spot, I
yeah,
didn't eat anything that morning. I'm thinking, man, I'm going to have a great ackee and saltfish, some nice fried dumplings. You know what I mean? And I get there, and the restaurant was half closed. There's no food. I'm thinking, what the hell am I involved in this good morning?
the restaurant wasn't even open when we got there.
Yeah,
We had to call the owner and be like, "Yo,
No,
we told us it was gonna be open for breakfast. 11 o'clock, we're there, and it's still closed." So that was
you're
a
kidding.
whole
No, you're joking me.
and I'm
man.
hungry, right? I'm starving. And I came with ackee and saltfish, man.
Oh man, yeah, we would never forget
Okay,
that.
so pop quiz, does the restaurant still exist?
No, unfortunately, it did close. Yeah,
Okay.
so it's not
All
around
right.
anymore.
It was in a great location, though, right on Kennedy Road across those apartments. But I
Yeah,
guess the regular hours was its demise, you know what I mean? Because that's a very busy area, you know what I mean? So I'm not too sure. You know.
yeah, and I mean, um, restaurant business is intense,
Yeah,
and you have
yeah,
to be on top of, especially like your cost accounting, to make sure that because the margins are so slim. So for those
yeah.
that run restaurants, are I mean, we do the Buy Blacks Restaurant Week because we try to highlight those that are in this industry because it is tough. So they definitely need our support.
Yeah.
Well,
Look at Caribbean restaurants. I mean, Caribbean restaurants, your cost of production is so expensive. I mean, saltfish is an expensive item, so it's ackee and oxtail and
Yes.
trying to source fresh product when you're doing the fried plantains and all of that kind of stuff, you know, like it's got to be a very difficult place to try to earn a healthy revenue, you know, healthy income. I
Exactly.
raise my hats to them.
I do watch a lot of food shows. So when restaurateurs come up and ask me questions, one of the first things I ask them is, "What's your food costs?"
Gotcha. Yes, yes. Gotta be on
But to,
top
but to reflect on that first meeting, that was like a great conversation. You know, I was the older person in the room, and to listen to the thoughts that were put out by Did anybody know each other? Did you guys know each other, or was it all strangers?
Majority. So Keisha, I'd met. I mean, Keisha went to school with my younger siblings, so I
Okay.
knew Keisha. But yeah, we had reconnected on LinkedIn. Darren Green was the first time I had met Darren.
Yeah.
Jody Ann Campbell, first time I had met Jody Ann, and then I had known Chris Beth. So
Okay.
us that were there, yeah, a few of us were just meeting for the first time.
Yeah. It's an amazing. It was amazing because we had this unknown band of misfits, and Ryan had this great. I mean, let's call it what it was. We had no clue. I mean, I didn't know what to
Yes.
expect in the conversation. But I mean, I was at a point where I had a bit of extra time, and I was curious to see what was because I knew what I missed as a young entrepreneur, what I never had. So
Nice.
when I saw the subject matter, I was curious to get involved. But yeah, that was a really good morning, man. So congratulations, Ryan. You really come along with my little brother.
Man, appreciate. And I'm curious if I can find, because we were posting it on LinkedIn. I'm gonna search through if we can find what kind of we had been putting out. I don't know if we had a flyer or anything, but
Yeah,
the
get those
conversation was really
documents.
just entrepreneurs, like what is missing. Like we've been operating, and I had been operating for about 8 years at that time, and it was like, yeah, there's something missing support wise. And even though whatever existed at the time, we knew something additional could support entrepreneurs, and that was like the basis of the conversation. We're like, okay, what can we build? And the beautiful thing that Ray was able to show us how to collaborate to execute. It's like being able to, one, that was our main office. Our head office actually still is Ray's address. So being able to register, have an office to do meetings, connecting to Glenn, the accountant, to help us register properly. And then Glenn even did workshops about accounting for us. So knowing how to connect the dots so that, because if we're trying to register ourselves, you're going to struggle. If we're just not cooperating, because there's a bunch of us, and learning how to work together, having that guidance, I would say we would not be anywhere close to where we are now without having, I would say, that elder statesman in the room to say, you know what? I've seen this song and dance before. If you want to do it proper, here's some guidance on how to do it. And yeah, we were more than happy to listen, because that really helped us.
Wow, that's a long. Ray, how does it feel to be called an elder statesman?
Actually, I appreciate it.
Hmm.
I mean, I had the luxury of having great mentors when I started out back in the 90s.
Hmm.
Glenn was one of those people. Glenn was a really good mentor to me. Me and a few other people. And I think it's important for us to understand our evolution and our role, particularly as we deal with young entrepreneurs, and more importantly, those of Caribbean and African descent. Many of us are immigrants from places, or children of immigrants from places where the process and the system of getting from one day to the next is very, very different.
Hmm.
And then we end up in these society with all these different systems in place that we have to try to learn very quickly, but more importantly, learn how to navigate them. So when I hear Ryan speak, I get a little misty eyed because I mean I didn't know the impact I had. I had no clue. I was just there sharing my journey. I had had several business partnerships in the past. Some of them were pretty big. Some of them were very successful. Some of them were total failures. But for me, what was important is that anybody I did business with, we developed a healthy friendship. And Ryan can speak to that. When Ryan kids came to the office, I mean, there was cookies and hot chocolates and children movies for them to watch. You know what I mean? They became like my great niece and great nephew. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's very, very important, that we become friendly with each other, and trust each other. Like we all gonna make mistakes. So I mean, I like the title, and I got the gray beard to prove it. I'm never gonna
Right,
die
right.
with my beard
But
off.
I want to tell you, Ray helped us understand what professionalism looked like. Because to this day, Ray is on point. Every meeting on point. At the office, I'm telling you, the office is like what we aspired to have our offices be like today. On point. And then having like snacks, water, notepads, pens. It If we didn't see the standard, I don't think that we would understand what's possible. You know, you just like you said, be a band of misfits and still in somebody's basement. But no, we were able to,
End of misfits.
you know, like we were able to elevate because we saw an example of excellence. And even when Dr. George Fraser comes and he's like,
Oh gosh, yes.
excellence is the standard. We're going for extraordinary. So we had this amazing foundation of seeing what a professional office looks like. A gentleman that's been in business over 20 years now supporting us and showing us the way, like, hey, come in, see what quality looks like, and now build from this. So you're not starting from zero. You're starting from this amazing foundation with somebody willing to teach. I mean, now we're trying to duplicate that. We're trying to show other entrepreneurs, like, hey, have a professional address. We have the co-working space with Chris Beth and Empowered for X, so that you're not starting from zero. Be connected to these experts, legal, accounting, marketing. Like, don't start from zero. Like, there's no excuses. That's what I love today. There's no excuse for entrepreneurs because the resources exist, and we saw how to structure it better because the example was there.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I must commend you guys. And my inspiration was Glenn Lancaster. You know, I
Right.
stepped into his office, and I mean, you see Glenn, he's always well suited, and I mean, a very
On
big
point.
office. That same building when I first started,
Mm.
well furnished. He had the receptionist in front. Um, you think you walk into a Bay Street office. So my approach was always very
Right.
simple. I want to bring that Bay Street experience up to
Mm.
Mississauga. So I played the part very well,
Mm.
but also we were delivering quality service to our clients and
Right.
mortgage solutions. But I want to shout out Chris Bett. I've been
Mm.
following her journey. I've been following what she's been doing. I know we don't speak as much very often, but if she's
Right.
listening, or you can tell her that, keep on doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
When I next I'm back in the city, I'm going to visit her studio space. I've been sharing the stuff with my son and with Stefan
Nice.
and Andrew. So shout out to Chris Bett, man. She's gonna do great things. I really admire and appreciate her.
Yeah. In case she's not listening, I'll clip this and I'll send it to her.
Thank you.
Power of YouTube.
Okay. Unfortunately, gentlemen, we have to end the love-in. We do have we do have a conversation. We do have a friend joining on, but let me tell you, there's been a pile of comments. We'll get to them, but we'll be back in 30 seconds. We'll do some house cleaning or housework. We'll have Desiree King on, and there's a pile of comments we got to get to. We got a program announcement. We got lots of stuff. So give us 30 seconds. We'll be right back. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here. These are two ladies. They're not all over the place. They're forward and they're straight shooters.
I got to stand in front.
No wonder people don't understand what the Democrats have been doing. That man lied 36,000 times, and we know this because you all counted it.
This is part of the story that a lot of news outlets are not talking about. All right, we are back on the Morning Vibe, and excuse my production challenges this morning. There's so much stuff going on, but we'll get it through. All right, so you are watching the Morning Vibe with Dr. Vibe, Ryan Knight, and our special friend, Ray McMillan. Let's get to some stuff here. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. We're getting closer to 1,910 subscribers. So for people who haven't subscribed yet and you're up to it, please subscribe. For those who have subscribed already, thank you so much. Share it out, tell it out. Also follow the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Substack. Join our Discord group. If you're up to it, you can email me at, dr.vib at the dr.vibeshow.com, or click at the link in the comments to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms I'm a part of. Please feel free to email me at the email address I already told you, and it's already on the screen, and you'll see it in the comments sections on most of the platforms. Can't forget our good friend, Dr. Tachi. Dr. Tachi runs Indie Soup TV, independent content creators platform based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Been around for about 19 months, edging on 28,000 subscribers on YouTube, which a lot of people have to realize. They don't realize that only 4% of all YouTube channels have over 10,000 subscribers. And the other day I was told by someone I respect, only 10% of all YouTube channels have over 1,000 subscribers. So I'm in one of those 10%. So I feel really good about that. Let's do one other thing. Program alert. Unless you've had your head in the sand, you've heard about the killing of a gentleman named Charlie Kirk, conservative activist in the United States. Well, tomorrow night, myself, Cesar from Black Canada Talking, Cesar Remy Musa, and also Cesar Nadima Musa. Let me get the name right. That's his Facebook. Cesar Nadima Musa, Dr. Tachi, who I just mentioned, and Emma Ansa, who you see on here once a month. We're going to be hosting a conversation. Charlie King has been killed. Impact and views from blacks.
Oh, you mean Kirk?
Charlie. I got to correct that. King should be Kirk. See, right. I'm having that sort of morning. Everything's going wrong this morning. Can't get nothing right.
Well, because the person, whoever Charlie King is nervous now because they're like, what?
Oh,
whoever knows Charlie King. Charlie King is fine. He was not murdered. Just let me know.
See, that's been corrected now in real time.
Yes.
There you go. It's all good. It's all good. And also, if you want to call into our conversation today, go to on your phone, laptop, desktop, whatever digital device, go to your favorite web browser, go to callme.rode.com, put in the code FSPL8L, make sure the letters are in capitals, put in your name, hit join the conversation, and we'll patch you into the conversation. So with all that, too much for me to do today, we're going to bring our friend back. Desiree King is going to be with us, and she's going to continue the conversation. And I got to get Ryan up again. So Ryan, you're with us. I'll get you on full. But Desiree, how are you?
I am well. I'm enjoying the conversation, just listening to you guys chat. I almost forgot I was on the show. I thought I was a viewer.
Yeah,
I'm hungry with the ackee and saltfish. I'm going,
Yay!
Yeah.
How have things been for you lately?
Hectic, but that's what life is really about, balancing in working in this field and personally living through a lot of the things that I speak about. It's quite interesting when you have to apply it to your own life. And, sometimes there's no structure in what you're doing in your own life. So it's been quite a week, quite a past 2 weeks. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask, before we get into, do you ever have conversations with clients and they're saying things and saying, you know what, that's a good idea?
Oh yeah, I do. I post Fact Fridays every Friday, and a lot of what I post is fresh from what I've gone through or clients gone through during the week that I think would be something great that I should share with followers and even non-followers because we're in the age of content, it lives forever. So I definitely do take real life situations and make them into something tangible that provoke thought. And a lot of it does provoke thought. I get calls off of that kind of stuff. So yes.
All right. Let me catch up with comments because if I don't, they'll be so far behind. So Fitness IQ Cam says, Morning. Destiny Savory says, Morning. Frequency Event Promotion says, good day, everyone. The food plane is in the house. He says, I heard about restaurants because he's right in the food industry. So
yes.
We
have to have him on when
restaurant
week comes back. Ready. Yeah, we want to see what the food industry is like in the U.S.
Yes, Frequency of Event Promotion says, what restaurant has closed? Just tuning in now, it closed a number of years ago.
Yeah.
Food Plane, so don't worry. Food Plane says, hello, Dr. Vi, Brian, and guests. Says DS here. Yes. And Brian, he's already reading your alleged mind. He says, in America, 50% of the restaurants that open close in the first year.
Whoa.
Secretary Sarah USA says, that's Raymond, never dressed down.
Yes.
100%. Food Plane says, my wife just said, turn down the brightness on the TV. I told her that's not the TV, that's Ray's smile.
Thank you.
That's the line of the day.
All
right. And Frequency of Event Promotions goes, mentorship is essential for professional growth. I have several mentors who might not even realize they are mentoring me. All right. With all that, we are caught up. So, Desiree, tell us what the C.R.A.F.T series is all about.
Well, the craft series is a way of bringing families and their loved ones together, particularly older loved ones together, to formulate a plan, to begin having conversations, depending on what stage they're at, on what the aging process will look like, what resources are available, to bring everybody on the same plateau, as opposed to assuming what might happen when the what ifs happen, or better, being proactive and be prepared before the what ifs happens. So we've already had two shows. We've discussed the first letter, which is C for clarity. Let's just put everything on the table and obtain clarity on what is the current situation, what is the best possible outcome in that situation, and what happens when an emergency happens. How do we react to that? A little bit more prepared. And then I think the last show we discussed the R, which was research, researching what are the available resources, how do we access these resources, and how do we begin to put an action plan in place. And then today we're doing assess. So we're going to assess again the current living situation, the needs, the risks, and begin actually physically putting down a personalized plan to work through the process.
Okay. Well, let me open up with the first conversation piece and saying, why is it important for families to take an honest assessment of their current situation before making big decisions about aging or caregiving?
Yeah. So the first major reason is really what the first step is clarity. You need to have clarity over the situation. I think all too often we may make assumptions that everything is okay until it's not, or we don't know because we're not asking. So we assume because mom or dad is living every day, if they don't live with you, that everything is going well. But behind closed doors, they may be having falls. They may be noticing that there's a shift in their memory and their recollection of their memory. We may be thinking, okay, usually when you have a family, especially with siblings, there's one primary person who really assumes the role of caregiving. So maybe assuming that, okay, this person's got it. But meanwhile, they're having burnout and they need the support. And the support isn't there because everyone thinks, oh, well, this is my big sister. If it is that person, or younger sister, she's always been the glue. This person's handling it, but they're really not. So that I would say is the key reason. And then I'm all about being proactive as opposed to being reactive. That's one of the reasons why I do home safety assessments. Let's not wait until someone falls and an occupational therapist has to come in now from the hospital and say, let me assess the home. Let's do it proactively. If we can prevent things from happening like falls, we're preventing a lot of other things that that come from that from happening as well.
I was curious, what's usually the main pushback you get as you're assessing and noticing issues? What's that conversation like with the families as you're noticing things and the
Yeah.
pushback you might get?
But even before that, the biggest issue is getting into the door. Um, a lot of older
Right.
people, they're very private. They've been there for how many years? They don't want a stranger, quote unquote, coming into their household, or they're very secretive about their personal affairs. So it's just even getting into the door and getting to the comfort level. A lot of my clients, when I first go, I have one particular client. I first came in, met him, met his family. And before we got into any type of discussion, we had to have a meal together. And then he wanted to know, I think it was a beef patty. He wanted to know, what is the ideal temperature that you warm it up on? And do you microwave it or put it in the oven? Little things that seem insignificant, but I answered the questions right. And it kind of broke down. I can see when the barrier literally breaks down. When you come in and the person's kind of side glancing you or watching you, suspectfully, or their arms are crossed. And then you feel the relaxation when they realize that you're really there to help and not pry and probe, or most importantly, force them into a situation, because nobody wants to be forced to do anything. And a lot of times I'm called in because the kids are saying, mom or dad, these are the things you need to do. And the parent is resistant because they're thinking, you want to take me out of my house.
Right.
So it's really reinforcing that that's not what I'm there for. I'm there to make sure that you are okay, you are safe, and there's a plan in place for you as you progress through life, because life happens and that's something we cannot escape from.
Nice. What I will do here is I've got to say good morning to Dr. Tachi. Dr. Tachi is in the house, says good morning, good morning. And we have a question from Fitness IQ Cam. She says, does the honest assessment happen with a professional?
Yes. So I would say I go into fact find because I'm not a licensed medical expert. I'm just someone who I was listening to Ray, for example, when he was speaking. You don't even realize that you're really building this platform or helping that many people. You just know you have a bunch of knowledge and you're able to help and connect the right resources. So if I'm the first point of contact, I would then recommend the right professional in that field to assist the person. And a lot of times people don't know who that right professional is. So I would make that call based on what I'm hearing, speak to that person and say, this is the situation happening with the family. I think you need to come in and continue the conversation on you based on your professional expertise there.
Okay, so Fitness IQ says, followed up says, or within the family only. So I think you covered that part too.
Right.
Ray, if you got a question, I would say put it in now because I see questions are flying in this morning. So anything you're wanting to put on the table?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Vibe. Good to see you again, Desiree. Like, you seem like we're family now, man. Like, I see you
I
so
know, right?
often.
All over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, but great series. I like the assessment part. You mentioned earlier that usually there is one child who takes the reins in an elderly parent. I mean,
Yes.
most of us have families of 3 or 4 siblings.
Mhm.
In your assessment, do you insist that all the siblings participate, or are you comfortable with being that one sibling?
I recommend that everyone participates. If that's not possible, then we may do a Zoom call where it's recorded and they can see the conversation, or my notes in the email when I summarize everything may be included. And it really depends on the parents as well. If cognitively I see that they're not experiencing any challenges and they may not want their children involved, or they may want them involved after the part. So it really depends on starting with the parents' permission. Who do you want here? Some families will say, I want this kid and not this kid. Okay, but then I can communicate everything to everyone. So it really depends on respecting everyone's boundaries because every family has different dynamics. So you
Mm.
can't really impede what you want on the dynamics within the family already. It's based on what is comfortable for everyone.
Yeah, that's
Do
true.
you ever notice the burnout and start to encourage other family members if you're noticing the one that's taking care is like on edge?
If I have access to that person, yes. Again, it depends on who I'm introduced to. Usually it's the person who brings me in, and then you'll see the other families trickling in and out. I've had families where I'm brought in, it's three siblings. I've never met the other two. The main sibling is keeping the other two updated. So I send very detailed emails outlining everything because, again, if I'm giving information, it's a lot of information because if you're not doing it every day, it's a lot of information. So I give a very detailed summary. That way, there's no need for interpretation. It's all written, it's clear. These are my recommendations based on what I'm giving you on our
Gotcha.
conversations.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Another question I have, what are the first signs that it's time for a family to pause
Mhm.
and really evaluate where they stand?
Again, I would say probably a notice of change in your parents' behavior, maybe forgetfulness, or if the person, not just normal, we all forget. Let me backpedal on that. I'm meaning if you're seeing the person, I call it circling in the conversation. So you're having a conversation, you started on this topic, and we've circled back to repeating that same topic. Those are like little early signs. You notice that mom or dad used to be really meticulous in how they kept their place or their personal self. And there's a change in that. That's not happening anymore. The biggest one is a recent fall or incident that's happened. That really is where most people begin, which is sadly enough, but that is where it usually begins when they realize, okay, hold on, things are not okay. I had a similar situation like that where a loved one was falling, wasn't communicating. And it wasn't until we picked up on the last incident because, medical alert kicked in, Lifeline kicked in, then we said, okay, let's assess this situation. This was being hidden. Something needs to change because you are no longer capable of being on your own because these things are happening. And I think at that point it was more embraced because it's very frightening. The last incident, she'd fallen, passed out on the toilet. Her glasses was, hitched in her face, and she had to crawl out of the room to get to her pendant to call for help. And I think that really shook her up. So it was sometimes when you notice those things happen, you've got to open the door because again, there's a fear of loss of independence, loss of decisions, trying to put together a way that you can probably come live with us, but still maintain that independence by doing that, but knowing that you have people who are there immediately to respond when something happens. So those are all triggers. And then, if your family's in pure argument when you discuss mom or dad or the situation that's happening, that's a trigger. You might need to bring in a professional therapist now to sit down and work with you and guide you through the process. Again, like I always stress, I am not a professional in any of those fields. My profession is real estate. I've just chosen to take my real estate background, that is the back burner, and elevate it by giving additional support for these families in these situations.
Gotcha.
Good stuff. Okay, just want to do a reset. We're hanging out with Desiree King.
Mhm.
Where do we stand? Honest assessment for better outcomes as part of the C.R.A.F.T series. If you want to get in touch with Desiree, there's her information there. Website, Instagram, Facebook, email. Also, if you're on most of the platforms you're watching this live on, all this information is in the comments section.
Mhm.
And also, too, since we have our special friend here today, also, if you want to get a hold of Ray, website, Instagram, phone number is there. Gentlemen, you want to continue with the conversation? Now, there are questions. Actually, let me get to a question here from the one and only Food Plane asking, when families are doing an honest assessment, what are the top 3 things they should look at first?
Yeah. So again, recent incidents, change in just behavioral patterns. Again, I mentioned before the condition of the home or oneself, but if the person was more social and now they're less social, they're more staying at home, that's another trigger to say, okay, something's happening in the change of your behavior. Um, yeah, just looking at the condition of the home, all the things I've listed before, caregiver burnout. One person seems aggravated because sometimes you get aggravated when you're the primary caregiver and it may come in the wrong way. I had a situation like that with a family where, I was like, well, my sister, who's the primary caregiver, seems to be yelling at mom sometimes. Not that she doesn't love her mother, she's the primary caregiver. And I said, well, she's burned out. She's working, she's this, she's that. You've got to find a way for family now to step in and give her that respite, let her know that it's okay to take a break but take a break, but someone else is in there assisting with mom.
Yeah, because it's like that feeling when you're taking care of your children and you're at the peak of frustration.
Yeah.
You love them so much, but it's like, do this. And then when you're
Oh, right?
it's like, and somebody from the outside seeing that, they're like, yo, why are you freaking on your parents or your child? It's like,
Yeah.
nah, man, you weren't
Exactly.
here the past week. And it's like,
Feeling, and they say once a man, twice a child, not saying that they can come to a childlike state, but it's exactly the same processes, but you're dealing with an adult now. Even all the processes you guys were talking about in business building, all these different things, pulling together resources, you're not alone. That is exactly what it's about. In this day and age, there is no reason to be alone. There are resources. There are people like me who, my category really does not have a niche that's defined. Like when I go to seminars or I do presentations as a vendor, I purposely created my own category because when I look at the list of
Nice.
vendors, usually I see a bunch of health, home health care. Okay, we got that. A lot of people who do exercise and dietitian, we got that. I've created my own category, which is the concierge for seniors to stand out in that arena.
right.
So yeah, and it's a need. It's a need that I've seen from my own experiences and from doing this for all these years. There is a need. There's a lot of information out here. Information is free. Information is almost too much, but people still don't know when, how, who, how to connect. They know they need a power of attorney. There's lots of stuff there about it, but they come, Desiree, who do I call for this after the fact? So it's really just knowing that there's a person who can kind of like be your one-stop shop if you choose, right? So and for me too, I will say, full disclaimer, when I do work with vendors, some vendors do offer incentives for you to utilize them more than others. I don't take incentives. If I do, I kick it back to the family, and it's a full disclosure. It keeps me on a neutral plateau. So there's no one-sidedness about who supports me more or who gives me more referrals. I don't, that's not how I work. So I'm going to say that openly and proudly. I don't.
I've got an interesting question for you that you're at, because I think it's interesting. Um, Dealing with the elderly, particularly those who are experiencing memory loss, mobility issues,
Mhm.
can't maintain their homes the way they used to maintain it. How do you deal with your own personal quote unquote burnout when you go into those environments and see the condition that
Yeah.
many of our seniors are living in, particularly those who probably live in them by themselves?
Yeah.
And we see a lot of single women. I mean, we were in the mortgage space,
Yeah.
and we've done appraisals on properties for people in their 70s and 80s.
Hmm.
We go through those appraisal photographs. You
Yeah.
want to start crying because it's very, very sad and depressing, particularly in case when they have children.
Yeah.
So how do you manage your, I don't want to say detachment. That's a very strong word. How do you manage? I mean, it's one of those things you get into that sympathy empathy mode. How do you remain professional and
Yeah.
be with you after seeing those situations?
That is a very good question. And I've asked myself that. And what I've realized is that it's similar to someone who coordinates funerals, or even a medical professional who has to deliver the news that your loved one is this amount of time and dying. It's not that they're not empathetic, but you have to be that person who's stronger, because if they're viewing you as a professional and you're breaking down,
Hmm.
that's not good. I like the good similar story is I was on a plane once, sitting in first class, and we're up in the air, and the plane's getting ready to land, and the flight attendants, when you're in business class, they're sitting facing you. So we're getting ready to land, and the plane did an aborted landing and kind of went back up. Now the look on the the flight attendant's face, I had to look at him and say, no, 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 you're not allowed to do that, because this is what you're doing, because you're supposed to help me maintain my calm. You know what I mean? If you want to freak out after the fact, you've got to maintain your stone your face. And you are empathetic, you give your condolences, but I can't afford to to get emotional and to bring it to another spiritual level. I personally believe, based on what I'm doing, when I speak about, you've heard me speak about from my childhood, coming from a mother who was passionate, coming towards here where I am now. I believe it's my assignment to be here for elders when they're going through a time where society may not regard them as being useful anymore, or they're just looked at as an old person who's a burden. I look at it as my assignment to do it. So I embrace the assignment. Our assignments aren't always easy. I
Right.
pray, I do pray a lot. I'm writing a book actually called, the title is Crafted by Grace. Tentatively, that's the title. But crafted, as you see, is one of my methods, crafted by grace. And a lot of it is having the grace to, before I go into a home, on a spiritual level, I hand it over to God and say, guide me through this process. So it's sad, but you get tougher each time you go through it, and you have to be, otherwise who's going to be for them? I've had a caregiver when I was taking care of my own mother-in-law. She used to have seizures and passing out spells, and the first time it happened I was like, what's going on? And then I realized, okay, this is the thing that happens. You bring the Limacol and put it by her nose, and she comes back around. We had a caregiver who was taking care of her, and she did it once in front of the caregiver, and we're trying to get my mother-in-law back, but the caregiver was bawling, and I'm going, I had to pull her aside and say, no, girl, you
Mm.
cannot. You're the support for the family. Like, if I wasn't working in this industry, I would have been like, what? You cannot. You have to build that, fortitude, I guess, for lack of a better word, to be able to deal with it, because someone's looking towards you to be the professional. A lot of times when people say, well, you're the professional, I think to myself, huh? I know I'm a professional, but you know what? I am. If I'm doing this repetitively and I have solutions to answers to questions, you have to establish that. Otherwise, it may not be your calling. And I, again, as this saying says, God don't give you more than you can handle. So I handle it. And I've seen it through this past week. My daughter lost her grandfather on her father's side.
Hmm.
I had to be there for her. I did not shed a tear. Not that I didn't care, but I had to be strong for her. So that was, and it might sometimes come across as cold. It's not coldness. It's strength for that person to have someone to lean on. that they won't stumble in a time of need.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting you mentioned the adaptation, like you have to adapt to the situation.
Yeah.
And my wife's a nurse, and I always remember the first, what would you call it? Not client, but patient death that she had, and
Hmm.
how it, man, she was crying, she was affecting her. And then but she learned now how to be strong for the
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Hey, at home you can kind of unload and talk it through. But
Yeah.
at that time, if she's breaking down, the family, then they're like, they have no one to really lean on. It
Yeah.
makes it just doubly worse. So I can see what you're saying, how you have to be, yeah, adapt and be strong for them.
Yeah. And it's really just pouring out resources, like really pouring out resources, coming from a place of giving, pouring out resources. A lot of what I do, I don't get paid for. My advice is free. My
Gotcha.
advice really is free because it's information that I've compiled over my years of knowledge. And they say, yes, you're paying for the person's knowledge, but it's not really about how much am I getting paid for this task or how much am I not. No, it's about giving the advice that is free. If I'm able to give advice and the family's able to guide themselves through it, then my job has been done. Move on to the next person. If you need more structured guidance and you need me in place, then we can start discussing what that looks like. But for most people, they just need, I need this. Who can I call? Okay, you know what? Here's some recommendations. That guidance. And then check in. How's that working for you? Okay, great. Anything else you need? Yeah, I need this, this, and okay, here you go. That's to me, it's just giving. And with that, you reciprocate.
Love that.
Nice. I love the question. How's that working for you?
Mm.
Really important question. And it's a little joke. In fact, you're talking about your airplane incident. I was very close associate of mine. They were flying down to Montego Bay, Jamaica, and she was messaging on the plane, and she says she always finds it interesting when the plane lands. People give a big hey, and
Yeah.
she put a laugh emoji. She said, "But you know what? There's no guarantee that that plane's gonna land."
No.
I
No.
don't understand how people don't celebrate when
Yeah,
the plane lands.
you
That
know.
is an achievement.
But there's a cultural shift in that too. Like, I think I'm old enough to know that back in the days, it was Caribbeans that did that on
Yeah,
Caribbean.
yeah. When you're flying to Jamaica,
Nowadays, Air Canada, Wish, any airline, people are, and the plane could be mixed. People are just, I don't know if we passed on something as Caribbeans, but I hear the first time my daughter traveled and heard it, she's like, Mom, is this for real? I'm like, yes. People are praising God that they're landing the plane, you
yeah,
know?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Good stuff. The food plane says clarity and assessment are such overlooked steps. Many people jump to solutions without really understanding the need.
Exactly.
so true.
Exactly.
Very
You
good.
can't help someone if you don't know what they need help in. Or sometimes they don't even realize that they need help in that situation. They don't even realize it. Or they think, a lot of times, I think it's like, I had a client who had a switch on the wall. The switch turned off the furnace, but it was usually it's on a higher level. It was on a low level, like a regular switch. And their solution was to put tape over it and say, don't use it. That's a band aid solution. You need to get a better, you know what I mean? Like, you need it because if someone doesn't know, they're going to raise the tape and hit it. So band-aid solutions don't, because something is working. A lot of times we operate in dysfunction. Quite simply, as humans, we use workarounds and we operate in dysfunction. I would say for my own self, I was sharing with Dr. Vibe. We had a break-in at our house last week.
Mm.
My husband and my aunt, 89 years old, were in the house. Praise
Ooh,
God, they didn't run into the person. They came in and left.
right.
But we have cameras. The back camera wasn't working. We were aware of this for a while, but we kept saying we got to get to it. That was dysfunction because of the back camera not working. We didn't catch what was happening in the back. We caught the front, not the back.
Mm.
Was that a plan? No. And that's me myself who preaches make sure this, make sure you slip. And that's what happens when you get caught slipping. And that brought an attention more so because had this person came in our house, was walking around with one of our golf clubs, and
Mm.
suppose my aunt had gotten up as the older person in the house,
Oh my gosh.
situation could have went a whole different direction. So that's even another part just from my own, and I did a post about it, from my own safety. Times have changed. We hear what's happening in the news and a lot of different type of home invasions, and we have to make sure, like if I walk by a lot of the houses in my neighborhood that have older people, they have no cameras, no type of security, nothing. So that's a whole other thing that I want to talk about here is an assessment. Look at the security in your loved one's home. Times have changed. We cannot just simply do things the way we used to do things, because there's no respect. There's a lot of people out here. As population growth, one of the results of that kind of population growth is you're going to get more violence, you're going to get more traffic, you're getting a lot more things. Look at New York, where in LA, where the bars on your windows, those things are normal. We haven't gotten there yet, but I think we are heading there.
Yeah, I think we are too.
We are heading there, and that's very real. So we have to look at that even for our seniors, because they're coming from a time when these things weren't necessary. Pretty soon we'll need fences around our house and dogs running around just like back home, because people have no boundaries because our gates are open, you know?
I remember seeing that in Detroit where the person's car was in a fence with barbed wire. I was like, yo, is it that serious?
It is.
Now the way that car thefts are going on in
Yeah.
just in Ontario, you're like, yeah, I think we need some barbed wire around our cars.
Yeah.
Like,
So times are changing, and we have to adapt to that, even with our elders who are living on their own, to ensure their safety.
yeah.
When I see an older person that needs to downsize and the family's just talking about putting them in a regular condo, I recommend they go into a more, well, it's hard to get into affordable housing for seniors. That's a long waiting list. But at least try to get into some retirement residences have condos that are part of the community, but they're individually owned, where you still have a building with the similar 55 plus age group, because that's all they'll allow in. That's a better option than going into a regular condo where you have people
Yeah.
from all walks of life that are up late at night. You want a building where everybody goes to bed at, a reasonable hour. There's no loud noises. There may be activities. So these are all factors you got to consider. Just putting them in a condo, being on one level, I don't think that's a good idea. And these places that are geared towards, say, 55 plus or 60 plus, that's all they're geared towards. And usually the price point for them is not as high as the market price, although, as a caveat, some of them may have a care plan attached to it that allows them to have tokens for meals and cleaning and whatever else. But it's all in preparation as things happen. There's a system in place that they can click a button really and activate it.
Right.
Catch up on some comments here. The food plane says, I appreciate how Desiree combines expertise with compassion. That balance is rare.
Oh, thank you.
Kofi Coach, one of my co-hosts on Black Men Can Talk, Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, says, Lima Cool, back home remedies to treat modern day ailments. Golden, did you say was used to treat seizure?
I don't know the proper definition for what was happening with her, because a lot of doctors tried to figure it wouldn't make any sense. Like, she would just knock out cold sweat and then get back up, yawn, and act like nothing was happening. But she was in a cold sweat, like slime, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
the Limacol, just run it by her nose and on her head, and she'd just start and pop back up. Most people probably don't know what Limacol is, but the Limacol would work. So,
Stuff.
yeah.
Food plane says he agrees with the people in the airplanes.
Yes.
And Dr. Tachi says Africans do that too when the plane lands.
Nice.
And Food plane is saying, oh, wow, I'm glad you and family are okay. Dr. Tachi also, wow, thank God you're all good. Dr. Tachi says bars on the windows were normal in DC as well.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Ray, you have not spoken for a bit. You good?
No, I'm listening to Desiree share, and start to hear about the crime you experienced.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in the Caribbean during the 70s, late 60s and 70s, and we had our homes never had any kind of security systems.
Mm.
By the early 80s, if you didn't have security bars in your home and two very, very fierce dogs in your yard, you're looking to become a moving target.
Yep.
Right.
When I first moved to Canada back in the 80s, I was always amazed at how people would drop their 25 cents in the Star container, pick up their paper, and no one was there.
Yeah.
So it's really saddening to hear that crime has escalated to this level in beautiful Toronto, or the greater
Yeah.
Toronto area. It's very, very sad. So hopefully we can, reverse that trend as opposed to see it get as bad as it is in some American cities. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida now.
Hmm.
When I drive to certain neighborhoods, particularly in the urban core, every house got bars on the doors and bars on the windows. My concern there is if there's an elderly person in the home and there's a fire,
They're stuck.
they got a serious problem.
Yep.
They're stuck.
Because
I've got another question for you.
Yeah.
Coming back to the assessment.
Hmm.
One of the things about aging in place for seniors is the cost.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Most homes in Toronto are two-storied homes. There's not a lot of bungalows in the Greater Toronto. So I'm assuming you work in the Greater Toronto area. I'm making an
Yes.
assumption now,
Yes. Yes.
right? So a lot of the homes are two-storied homes with stairs, and if they're newer homes, they've got these very narrow stairs that are very, very steep.
Mm.
Not like the old back splits from Malton and Scarborough back that were built back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
When you sit down with a family or an elderly person and you start to break down the cost of retrofitting their home, what
Hmm.
is that conversation usually like, and how receptive are they to spend the kind of money they need to spend to stay in their home?
A lot of times, if I identify myself that the person needs to move but they're resistant, that is exactly where I go to, because sometimes saying something is not enough to enable someone to make a proper decision. So I will actually bring in the stair lift company, get an assessment so they hear the price. For narrow stairs, there are companies now that build elevators that can kind of go in any area of the home, just as long as it has a foundational wall, and can take them up and down depending on the size. Those are about 70, 75 grand. The
Hey,
stair lift, if it's straight, 5, 6 grand. Once you add a curve, now we're looking at probably 10 grand and up. I also have, if they're pre-planning and they are able to do a stair lift, then there's organizations like the March of Dimes that do help fund that cost. But again, you have to do it proactively, not reactively, because the application takes time. But the time I put together all the costs of them. Okay, we'd like to stay at home. This is what it looks like to do it properly. Like, even if someone is walking and say holding onto the wall as they're walking, you can actually get the bars like similar to what they have in retirement residences in the home aesthetically, but there's a cost. So I put together the cost to really fully retrofit a home. I did it for a client once in a 2-story home. It was about $150,000 to make it fully accessible. And I'm talking about even the kitchen countertops lower so that they can, if they have a wheelchair, roll under and kind of access stuff, the bathroom counters, even the laundry, change the location of the laundry. If it's on the basement, let's move it up to the main floor or the second floor if better. So once people get those costs, I think that's when reality begins to go click, 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 and you hear them coming back saying, okay. And then that's not even talking about maintaining the home. I'm just talking about aging in place safely. I've had families where the mother's like, well, I want to have a caregiver live with me 24/7. Okay, we're looking at about 30 grand a month, maybe. This is
Mm.
what it looks like. So it's just giving them the costs, and they pretty much analyze it there for themselves. And eventually, the decision is not about making an immediate decision, it's about making an informed decision. So I'll give the cost for the big things that you can bring in and have done. But then I have a list of stuff that I recommend that they can do that don't cost as much, but it's immediate things for safety, like installing bars by the toilet for them to help get up, and if they're by the kit by the sink to hold on to. If they have wooden stairs with no kind of grips, there's strips you can get in Amazon that they glow at night, and even a light so you can put on the stairs that are activated as you're walking down to light up the hallway, brightening the lights throughout the household. If the walls are the same color as the flooring, that could be something where they're not identifying floor from wall as they're walking. So let's change how that looks. Those are more affordable recommendations. So when I do a full home safety assessment, they will receive a report similar to a home inspection report when you're purchasing a home, where they show you pictures and these things. I'll do the same thing on a home assessment basis with photos, with links directly to products I recommend that are quite affordable, that they can, while making the bigger decision, we still are trying to enable them with some safety. And I've said before, one of the first things I recommend is a safety pendant that will trigger if they fall on any level, but they've got to wear it. So that's a whole other discussion in getting them to wear it. But it's still recommendations that are there. It's better to know than not know. And I tell people it's better to live. It doesn't make sense to live with the pain of regret. So it's better to take the steps you need to take. There is no cost on someone's life, on someone's safety. You're, as one of my, I think you all know her, one of my favorite persons, Lorna King Bob, who's a nurse. She says your health is your wealth. So we can't look at our money as our wealth. Your health is your wealth, because the cost you're trying to save if an accident happens could be way more expensive than the cost of just making simple little changes. Lifting up rugs. I go through Caribbean households. I walk through the house and I'm just picking up rugs, and I'm getting, pushback because I don't know what it is. We love rugs. A lot of rugs. So, we got to pick up the rugs, and, if the rugs are, you want them, then you have to make sure it has the right backing on it so it's affixed to the floor, because
Yeah.
one little rug flicked up can cause a tragic fall. So that's the problem.
Right.
Do you find more people opting to age in place with the retrofitting or deciding to sell and move into a one level home where mobility and movement
Hmm.
might be a lot more easier and reduce the risk of
Hmm.
in-home accidents.
I think most people try to stick it out at home as long as they can, knowing the cost of retrofitting. I have a client right now who has those numbers. She's had knee surgery. She's still pitter pattering about getting the stair lift. She knows she needs to, but she's still trying to make it the way she's been doing things. So it's not a one conversation thing, it's a revisit. Have you done that yet? No. Well, how come? I'm still thinking about the cost. Okay, I get it, but you want to stay at home. So it's just, again, I'm circling now with the conversation. And they start laughing because they're like, okay, here she comes again, like the marshal over me. But I'm reminding them this is something that you need to do for your safety and the family as well. Because sometimes I guess kids are afraid to speak to their parents because it's their parents. So it's very hard to get them to budge as well. I've had to convince kids whose family, the household needs decluttering, and a lot of the stuff that mom's holding on to is stuff that they've put in the house and she won't release it because she thinks they want it, but they don't want it. And I said, okay, well, give your mother permission to release it so that she can clear up the space as she needs to. So, no, yes, to answer your question, most people choose to stay at home. As much retrofitting, I've probably fully retrofitted the way it should to age and trades properly. Throughout my career, I've met one household that really, I mean, I'm talking about even the walk in tub that closes and full blown retrofit. They did it. And that was without their kids. Most people will do this and that. But you know what? Doing one thing is better than nothing,
Hmm.
right? It's
Definitely.
baby steps. One thing is better than nothing. If each step of the way we can get you one thing, that'll help. Because we don't know how or what if is going to happen. We're assuming it could be the rug. It could be, we don't know.
Right.
You can walk outside and boom, you can't protect, but it's just doing things enough that you're making steps, you're making progress. Then I would say the next percentage of people do decide to move, but usually that's triggered by the loss of a spouse. So they're alone, and that takes time as well, but that's usually I see what triggers that. Couples, I've seen a lot of couples decide that, but that's usually if they're more active probably, and
So
they're
that's
snowbirders.
understanding.
Yeah, they're snowbirders and they want to be able to go back and forth without worrying about the snow building up in the winter or the maintenance of the house or whatever. So that would be the option that they would choose.
Yeah, I had a client, she had no children, actually in
Mhm,
her 50s. She sold her home in Mississauga, beautiful home,
mhm,
and her and her husband, actually neither of them had any kids. And then they bought a condo in streets, in sorry, in, by Square One.
mhm,
And they were, then they bought a place back in Jamaica. And I think the guy had just turned 60 and the wife was probably in her late 50s.
yeah.
Let me ask my co-host a question, Mr. Ryan Knight.
Mm.
Have you and your parents had a conversation and your siblings about aging in place? And would you have them have a conversation with our guests here? Because a lot of times I mean, I'm the eldest in my family.
uh,
And it's a lot of pressure on the youth to have that we can advise people and we hear all these great conversations, but do we now have that conversation? Because I mean, I'm pretty sure your parents were in their 60s, right? And I know
yeah.
your dad is pretty healthy looking, but um, we old school Caribbean guys are a little more stubborn, right? So have you actually ventured into that conversation with your own parents, right?
Not officially, I would say, because recently my wife and I were working on our will, and I don't think my parents have done theirs.
Mhm,
So sending the note to my siblings has been on my mind to say, like, hey, has mom and dad done this? Should
mhm,
we have a conversation? Because the last time I brought it up, it was more kind of in a joking way. I think now I have to bring it up in an actual.
Yeah.
I know y'all are young, and unfortunately, my mom's best friend passed away over the past week.
mhm,
And I mean, that starts to make you think, hey, do we have things in order? Because age is no longer a factor. Even though y'all are young, she had me when she was really young. So you're thinking that you have 20, 30 years left. That is not guaranteed. And like you said, Ray, if we're not having this conversation now, like Desiree said, it's actually our fault because we know better. So yeah, that I would say
No
that
better,
is
no
like
better.
high priority this week.
yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. Having the conversation and again putting all the facts, not just what you think. Get actual numbers. Show them they're there when the person's walking through, saying this is what's required, this is what's recommended. Now, what I will do for a lot of people because some of these companies, they can tend to be their salespeople. They're trying to sell their item. So I'll be there. They have the number, they have the name. I'm the contact person. So until the person says or the family says, yes, I'm ready, I will block the harassment that will come with it. I might turn them off of it. And I'll say, nope, no decision yet. Once they do, okay, now I'll provide you with their information. If
That's
that's what the family wants. Because I
setup.
see that
Yeah.
I can annoyed with. Every time I look at the phone, I'm like, again? Like they're really, and that's what they're gonna do. That's what people do. They sell. So there has to be a buffer, whether it's a family member or myself, to do that as well, because you are calling for cost of items that are necessary, but they're also big ticket items.
Right, right.
That's actually very important to me. We get a lot of seniors who are financially abused by
Yes.
contractors and companies. So it's very, very important people understand that role you play
Yeah.
very clearly. I mean,
Yeah.
I worked at a bank back in the 90s, and I had this older French Jewish client. She was probably in her 80s, late 80s. Now, she lived in a rental apartment, and her fridge stopped working. And she came across to the branch to withdraw $1,000. Now, back in the day, I was a financial advisor. And so any large transaction that a client made who was one of my clients, the teller would come and call me and say, oh, this person's withdrawing this much money.
Mm.
Uh, so I called her. We had a very good relationship. And I called her into my office and I asked her, I said, why are you taking that? Because that wasn't part of our normal withdrawal habit.
Mhm.
She said to me, the superintendent says he needs $1,000 to buy the new fridge. No, you know me, Ryan. I'm old school Guyanese. I switch this in a heartbeat. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
Tell the superintendent, I have the money. Let him come across and ask me for it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you're in a rental apartment. How you
You're paying
paying
for the
for it?
fridge.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that was
That's
the
so
end of that
awkward.
conversation. So I mean, we gotta be very, very careful, mindful of our seniors. I mean, I commend you for being the buffer
Yeah.
because yeah, those phone calls. Like I get about. I'm in Florida.
Yeah.
This is the spam capital of the world.
Wow.
I get about probably 100 phone calls a day, and I got to block every single call, man. They call me
Yeah.
the same company is calling from 8 different numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
eight
block-
times in an hour, I get a call. You know what I mean? I've got a loan approved for $100,000. I got a business loan for $65,000. This is my last call for the approval. So I can imagine an elderly person in their 70s or 80s. You know, like somebody calling you. You know, we want to retrofit your home. It's going to cost you $200,000. You had the lift cost 25 grand,
Yeah.
and
Right.
do a wire transfer to us, do an email transfer. We're going to send my copy of the check, or send to this account, and
Yeah.
we hear that stuff all the time. So
Yeah.
the assessment part of what you do is,
Mhm.
I mean, all of the 5 parts of the craft process, the craft methodology are important, but
Yeah.
that assessment part where you have to start thinking about spending money,
Yeah.
having that person in the middle between the provider and
Yeah.
the client is very, very
Yeah.
important.
Well, even the vendors I work with, again, like I said, if it's a bigger company that offers a certain percentage for partners, I will kick it back, and that's a full
Yeah.
disclosure to the client. Or if it's someone like a handyman, I work out. First of all, I make sure they're senior friendly. By that I mean they're not going in there. I tell them you're not going in the first conversation before you even get on my vendor list. You're not. I don't want upselling unless it's something that you really see the family needs, and I will. I want to hear about what's happening as well, right? So the upselling, the excessive prices in this, and we try to have prices that are affordable for them. I'll give you an example. I'm working with a family right now who there's no property for sale. They're in a rental. Their great aunt passed away. She's lived in the same apartment building, 2 bedroom, for about 50 years. And the family's up here from Jamaica. They're the executors. No family up here doing it. They really don't have anyone up here. They have a bed, a used bed, that she has, that her sibling, who's also like about 89, who's alive still, he wants the bed. This place is located in the Bayview and Eglinton area of the city.
Mm.
And where he wants the bed to go is in Markham, like say McCowan and Highway 7 area. That's about a 30-minute drive.
Mhm.
He called someone, I don't know which mover he called, but the price, she said, oh, he might not take the bed no more because the person's charging him $1,000. I'm like, 1,000 who? Like my
Right.
action, I'm sorry, I am corporate, I am professional, but there's a point where you step out of that and you're like, what? Like what kind of
Yeah, it's just nonsense.
nonsense is this? I said, hold on a second. Let me just make a few calls. I called one of my guys that I have that does all kinds of stuff. He will go and, he'll rent the U-Haul truck, $20. I did the calculation myself with the mileage. Okay, this is what the mileage is going to cost. Even with tax, even with insurance, it still came up to about 200.
Oh
You
my
know?
goodness. Look at
So, I had another family who they discovered they had bed bugs in their house.
Mhm.
I wasn't able to help them because they already called the first person they got. They ended up spending $6,000 to remove bed bugs in their house. Like, excuse me. And I
That's
spoke to I have a guy that owns the company that does pests and whatnot. He was like, you
nah,
know,
nah.
so people get caught up in the emotion sometimes of what is happening. And sometimes you have to pause and say, hold on. Like
Right,
$1,000 to move a bed that's like a used bed from here to here. Like you're taking advantage of somebody. And
right.
that stuff really, 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 really upsets me. You know, like, you
Mm,
don't want to talk bad about other businesses and stuff, but when you see that, you're like, no.
mm.
I said pause. So yeah, my guy's charging them. Maybe it's gonna come to about 250, and he's gonna take the bed. He's gonna take apart the bed, take it there, not just drop it off. Set it up where you want it set up.
Right.
That's how you do things. You know, I what am I getting from that? Nothing. I'm just serving my client. You know,
Yeah.
so
You get to tell the story.
and I get to tell. You know, I get. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's so
Yeah,
many things that happen throughout the week that I get so many stories from.
yeah.
That is really, you never know what someone is going through or people are going through until you bring up a topic. So it's really having discussions that every department, what I've realized in doing this, every realm, every business or government organization has their mandate. And if something doesn't really fall within their mandate, they may or may not make referrals, or it goes without somebody checking in to see if they followed through on that. So my mandate in my business model is to follow through on that, to see it through as best as I can. I don't force people, but I my mandate is to follow through. I
Yeah.
follow through, I see how things are going, and then even above that, I will check in and give. I don't check in with just an email. They get emails and stuff, but I check in with a phone call. How are you doing?
Yeah.
I had a client who I helped out who was in Florida. I can't remember the name of the place in Florida, but he was in Florida, had a good friend of his in the same age group who was going blind, needed to move, transition, and wanted to know if the auction services I use are there. I connected with them. I not only said, here's the number, I connected him with my representative and was able to provide that information. I don't work in Florida, but I'm still, and I'm sure there's a service in Florida that does it, but does he know about that? No. He
Right.
knows his friend went through this. This is how he was helped, and his friend knew. Let me call Desiree because I'm sure if there is a way, even if there wasn't the same organization, for me to sit down at a computer and do some research and really vet, call, get pricing, it's nothing for me to do that in vet. I can vet someone real quick, you
Hmm.
know, just off a basic level. Obviously, I go deeper with my, but it's very easy to do my research. We know there's all sorts of resources for doing that, so that's what I do.
I want to ask a question here. What role does cultural context play in how Black families assess their situation and plan for the future?
Yeah. And my apologies. Just before you answer it, I did have to run because I have to head to this other meeting. But always good seeing Desiree. Again, same
Yeah.
Ray. Good
Yes.
seeing you as well.
We'll see you,
Brother.
Ryan. Take care.
Yeah. The biggest one is the distrust of institutions. We know that a lot of historically racism in healthcare, lack of keeping data on things that are happening, financial, even just mistrust overall. I think, just in general, when you look at the generation that comes from fear of scarcity, um, fear of just holding on to what they have, I think the biggest thing is mistrust. Who do I trust? I think that is the biggest thing when we deal in our community with the seniors is, who do I trust? And one of the things that helps is when they see someone looking like them walk through the door. It makes a difference. So I think definitely mistrust. And then again, we come from a family historically where a structure where in the Caribbean we don't hear about people going into really retirement residence now, maybe so more, but usually our parents lived with us. We had a generational home. Things have changed since we came here now. So I think it's also that we're assuming that, okay, well, you know, my older brother or someone else is going to take care of this person. Or you have a sibling that wants to take care, but they're not able to equip their house properly. So I think those are the two biggest things for them. And we don't, you know, yeah, we don't have even if we look at outside care, like a retirement residence, we don't really have anything that's primarily us as well. So that's a disconnect as well, that we don't have that. And we do need to start pooling together resources to start building communities like that for our people where they don't feel like they're one of. The newer locations, as I've said before, they do tend to have a more diverse crowd But if you go into the more older, long-standing communities, it's like a country club. So
I know you've probably answered this question in previous, but Food Plane is saying, how do you know when it's the right time to move from talking about it to actually making changes?
the right time is to begin by having the first step, which is to look at the situation, assess the situation, put a plan into place that says, even you can even have milestones on it. This is what we're going to do. If kind of like a, if this happens, then this is what we may look at. Or putting the things into place now proactively. Right now is the best time. Putting the steps proactively that really don't cost much, but they're there just in case. I.e., as I mentioned before, if you see your loved one is walking and they're kind of holding onto the wall as part of their process of getting down the hallway, take note. It's really be aware, take note, and look at what's happening. And as they get older, things happen. You may get triggered from something in the news. That's a great thing to use as an example. Or the recent, like Ryan said, the recent passing of a loved one. You look at that and use it as a story to get into that conversation. But there is no truly right time. The right time is when you're able to have that conversation. And it may be a step by step process to getting to that point, but just putting things into place. I'm big on the home safety assessments just because I know a lot of stuff that happens comes from that. So, really having a home safety assessment done and just having a plan. It's all about preparing a plan. When I do the assessments, I will put together a plan depending on what they need to do, saying this is what it looks like with dates and times. This is what I can bring in. And for me, what I do is once the person says yes, they do want this or that, I move quicker before you can say no. So I'm very you gotta no, you gotta catch them.
Time never lost a fight.
You gotta catch them while it's hot. So when the iron's hot and they're saying yes, I want all of this, before they know it, the plan's in place. Okay, this is happening, and before you know it, it's happened. So it's not just saying it. Once you get the yes, start pulling the resources, start getting it together, make it happen before they have a recourse and don't want to do it.
That's good. That's good. Let me ask, what tools or checklists do you recommend for families who want to assess their readiness for the next stage of life?
hmm So, as I said, the home safety assessment, that is huge. You can find a lot of them online. Again, if you see the checklist online, you're not able to do it. There are places like I do them. I know once you've had a fall, they'll send in someone to do it, but that's more just, it's not as, I do a 240-point assessment. So I'm looking at lighting, I'm looking at everything throughout the house. So I'm looking at the exterior. Are bushes too tall? A bush that's too tall in front of a home could be a good place for a thief.
No worry. Go ahead. Steve,
Let me code
no
switch.
worries. It's all good. You feel at home here. Be yourself.
There's certain words you just can't say. A thief. This is hilarious. Yeah, man. There's a bush. There's not enough automatic lighting. Those kind of things are small things outside. Even like little, when you have your pathway and little bushes are going in between. If it's raining, that's slippery, right? We don't think about that, but it is. The steps when they're coming up and down, do they have handrails? There's so many little things. So home safety checklist number one, because where do we spend most of the time? In our home.
Home.
Most accidents happen in our home.
Home.
So, home safety checklist. Caregiver readiness and support. Caregiver burnout is a thing. It's real. Whether or not it's a family member or a spouse. Respite care. Although you have, say, a father or a mother who one person is declining a little bit more than the other, and that person is the caregiver, try to find ways to still bring in respite care and introduce them to a caregiver. A lot of times I recommend introducing a caregiver only once a week, just so that they're getting familiar with someone. So if and when things progress, there's somebody already in place that is familiar with the family, familiar with the household, and they're more open to accept that as things go along. And then financial, we have a million checklists on, have your power of attorney, have your this, have your that. Financial checklist. These things are, you can look them up online, or you can reach out to someone like me and get those checklists. And then family communication. Form a WhatsApp group with the family. Like we have that for my mother-in-law who's passed away now. She has a twin sister. We have two different groups. one for her with the family, one for the other one with the family, where we communicate different things. Another important thing is create a binder with like a binder online in paper, whatever way you want to do, with like all of their doctors' names, who their doctors are, probably have a copy of their blister pack, what their medications are, any kind of health challenges, all that stuff, have it in a binder. So if you say have an incident where even the ambulance has to come to the home, they're going to ask you these questions. What type of this?
Mhm.
Hand it to them. You have it in one place.
Nice.
When I was taking care of my mother-in-law, we knew that she needed a higher level of care. I was actually documenting every single meal, just like they do in the in long-term care. I was doing it at home, documenting every single meal, what she had, how much she ate, how many bowel movements, how many. So it's a role you take on of documenting everything. So if you're doing that position and you are taking care of someone, document it all so you know if they've missed a pill, if there's this, because when you go to the doctor or you're facing a medical professional, they have the information they have is what you give them, right? So you've got to be able to build that case where something may not seem significant to you, but when you present it to a healthcare professional who's looking at it from a different lens, they're able to get a more holistic view of what has been happening over time. Something like taking the blood pressure, document all that stuff, the time of day, do it 3 times, their insulin, if you're needing to check that. I mean, now they have apps that do it depending on what they have, but all these things have these checklists in place.
Nice. Nice. Let me just say here another thing. I want to have you expand on this intergenerational perspectives, how
Mm.
different generations view, quote, where we stand, unquote.
That is a tough one. When you're dealing with the younger generation who may or may not have grown up with their grandparents or their elders, they've got their own world going on. So I think for a lot of it is just exposure to what's happening to a certain level so they understand as well. Roles can switch very quickly within generations as well. So it's good, again, like I said, to have one platform where the communication is kept, and it's almost like a journal or a log where if someone falls off, someone else can pick up and there's a record of what is happening. So it's just, I think for me, it's really record keeping and keeping everyone in the know, whether it's just copying on the emails or having this guide that you have in place, and maintaining the legacy as well, the shared stories, encourage ways to do that. There's places you can there's a free app I know about. It's not yet for sale, so it is a free app where families can go in, and it's like a family Facebook platform, not, it's like Facebook, but it's for families, and families can come on there and insert stories and kind of build so that you have a diary online that everyone can come in and look at these stories and learn about what's been happening intergenerationally as well.
One of the many things I value about what you do is making it easy to bring outside help.
Yes. Yes. People may view bringing in outside help as a sign of weakness. It's not. Asking for help is a sign of strength because no one knows everything. Even I don't. Some questions I get asked, and I'm like, I'm really not sure what the correct answer is, but let me make one phone call and get you the answer or connect you to that person. So I'm not afraid to say I'm not sure, but I do know one thing is that I haven't had any situations that I wasn't able to direct the person to the right resource who maybe in their own resource kit has somebody else who can get even a better answer than them. But it's still making that connection and speaking up that there is a need. A lot of people, there's privacy, there's don't want anybody to know what's happening within the family. That's not a good plan. You have to have you don't get help unless you say something or you even open the door to the conversation. So it really starts, we're circling right back to the first step, having that communication, opening the doors for communication. And in that conversation, when I'm having a lot of conversations, I don't come in with like a checklist that says, okay, ask this question, ask this question. It's a flow. Because off of each question comes another question. Everyone's circumstance, although it seems same, it can be different. And you've got to really build on those questions to get to the root of what is happening. if you have a family where you have a family where dad's taking care of mom, and you're always asking how's mom, how's mom, how's mom. Well, how's dad? Like sometimes the person who's the caregiver gets forgotten. So I always make it my priority to check in with the person who is the caregiver. Oh, I'm good. No, no. How are you really? How are you really doing? Give me a. I like using a scale, 1 to 10. Where are you checking in at? Ten's the highest. Where are you checking in at? How are you feeling today? And that could just be something with the family too. I grew up with my daughter doing that. What are we checking in at? Based on that number, I know where I need to focus on in what's happening with you.
Excellent.
Yeah, that
All
was
right.
very,
Art Lee
very
Creative
important.
Agency says, good morning, everyone. And Dr. Tachi says, wow, an app like that seems extremely useful.
Yeah, I will share that with you, Dr. Vibe. And I will.
Yeah.
It's a very, very good app. Like it's something that I was at a trade show and I met the person doing it, and that was through a retirement living type community. So it is a trusted vendor as well. I will share that as well. And there's also another thing that I'll share with you for families researching different retirement residence and long term care options. This is one app that someone who went through the process has put together. It's called El Dorado, that one. They've put it together so that a lot of times when you see advertisements for retirement residences, in particular, it's paid advertisement or it's them advertising themselves. This is a neutral place that he comes together and puts all these things that's not biased and has it based on a map, based on the location. Here's a map of everywhere that's available. This is the level of care that they offer.
Wow.
I have a question for you, Desiree. Um, I'm assuming that a lot of the clients you deal with
Mhm.
are probably female-led households because we have a higher percentage of women migrating to North America,
Mhm.
Canada, and most we got a lot of single black, divorced, widowed black women.
Mhm.
What is the response like between males and females in terms of how they deal with the assessment and the craft methodology and how to make the necessary changes in their lives? Are men more reluctant? Are we more open? Are we like, no, I'm good? I played soccer for 50 years. I'm the fittest person on the face of the earth. Meanwhile, I can hardly even cook up this class by myself anymore. Like,
Mhm.
what is it like dealing with, Asian females versus Asian males?
Aging females, I think, are a little bit more challenging. Um, just if you're even looking at, let's start with the need to declutter. It's a bigger challenge. I think men, when they reach a certain place, they're just ready to let it go. This is what I need to do and move on. I think with the woman, because not saying men are not emotional, I'm choosing my words carefully, but there's a different process in working through that with them. I've found a lot of the men I work with, it's more of a financial mindset of what do I need to do to get from here to here. So if that's answering, I don't know if that's what experiences you've seen, but with women, it's more of a process. They will, though, however, probably take your advice and implement the steps necessary quicker. Because sometimes with men, you have more of the pride and I don't need any help and I don't need this or that. Right. So it really depends on the individual and what their mentality is. But definitely, like on a decluttering, downsizing level, it's harder, I find, for the easiest job I've done with those are men. With the women, it's a lot different in going through the mythology of why are we keeping this? Can we release it? It's a whole different mythology and the emotions that are attached to it.
Does education level play a
Yes.
role in the way they deal with the whole process?
Definitely, definitely. If someone, has come from a profession where they're more of a professional and they've worked all their life and they've done these things, and definitely um, they adapt more easily and they understand the logic behind it. If you don't have that, then that can be more of a struggle for sure. And that's not diminishing anyone based on education level. It
Yeah,
just
yeah,
is,
yeah.
it is it is what it is. But definitely it does play a factor. I have a family right now who um, someone passed away recently, and it's the mother alone. The family, mother, father, the children, they're not highly educated. Let's say that, And right now, they don't even have a funeral plan in place.
Wow.
Um, the body's at the hospital. They're
Oh,
disillusioned about, one of the siblings, again, disillusioned, wants to have this big, massive funeral just to kind of like show off, like, and it's like, what's really going on here. But that's what they're going through right now is the process. One person was the primary caregiver. He stepped back and said, okay, that's what you want to do it. But in the middle of that, they're forgetting that the process needs to be taken care of. You just can't put this on the burner. You need to, give this person some dignity and carry on with the plans. And I've provided them with the resources of who to reach out to, whatever, but I can't force people. It's just a matter of checking in and let them go through the process themselves. But definitely, education level plays a whole big role in how people process and do things.
good stuff. Want to say hello to Danny Stone, Coach Stone, long time no chat. Let me just see if I can get him up here. Yeah, there we go. Coach Danny Stone, good to hear. And saying, great question about checking in on the caregiver. That's a whole other conversation about caregivers.
Yeah.
That is a whole other conversation about the caregiver thing. Uh, Let me ask, what is one area you wish families were more honest about this subject
One area I wish they were more honest on this subject
to themselves?
to themselves. Everyone wants to age in place. What is the true cost of doing so correctly? I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of people are working on workarounds and what works until it doesn't work. So I think it's really the honesty on, yes, I want to be in the house. Yes, I want these things, but is it feasible? Is it doable? And what resources can I tap into to do so? We have reverse mortgages. A lot of people are hesitant still towards doing that. Most of the families I've worked with, I've probably had about three or four, and they had it before I came into the picture. But for most people, that's not even a conversation. They're hanging on to that wealth. They're hanging on to it. So it's getting them to understand that you have these resources to tap into, and whether you use it for doing home modifications or transitioning to somewhere else, it's getting them to really be realistic about the cost of aging in place safely and properly. That is one thing, bar none. Most people are not, because they fear the cost when they hear it. It's a sticker shock when you hear it. But if you want to do it properly, and then also it's doing it, but doing it in a way that you're still maintaining the value of the home if there is a home involved, right? So doing it aesthetically in a way like stair lifts, you can take them out when you sell the home, right? They're very easy. If you're going to put an elevator now in, let's be strategic in how we're doing that. If you're going to relocate the laundry room and stuff, let's be strategic. If you're going to make a room on the ground level, let's be strategic. That's something, even if you have a child who wants their parents to come and live with them eventually, and they're looking at a home, a lot of people bring me with them because I'm looking at the home on a level of, when I'm on the ground floor, where can we, based on the structure, and again, this is just based on my experience as a real estate agent, where can we probably knock out a wall and make one of the rooms into a bedroom? And where can we have a washroom with a stand-up shower? How do we do these things? So it's looking at the lens of how to do it, but again, do it properly. A lot of parents I hear, because they're no longer able or wanting to go up and down the stairs, they're sleeping on the couch. That's where they end up, in their own home or wherever. That's not a plan. So it's really, yes, stay in the home, but let's do it properly, or let's look at the options that are there so that you're able to do it properly. That is my biggest thing, I'd say.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
anything you want to add?
with the aging population we have in Canada, I mean, many of the upgrades that are required to age in place, particularly installing an elevator, for example, and upper level laundry rooms, would add tremendous value to a home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things we have to look at is what the current value of the home is,
Yeah,
and what the future value will be
exactly.
with these upgrades put into them. A lot of times people aren't able to quantify those values. All they think is the expense right now. I
Yes.
mean, if you've got a house that is worth, $1 million in Mississauga, and you put in, 3,000 square foot home, you put an elevator in there. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, based on the demographic,
Yeah.
that part of the city,
Yeah.
and I mean, even young be happy to have an elevator in their home
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
when it comes to selling that property. So that's something that has to be
Yeah, the value that it
really,
adds to the property.
really illuminated to the clients. But Desiree, I mean, this has been a great conversation. I just learned. I mean,
Yeah.
I had the experience of living with my grandmother as she aged out. I was her primary caregiver
Hmm.
when I was in university.
Hmm.
Um, I can speak from personal experience that I mean, it was one of the most tiring periods of my life
Mm.
because you're so emotionally connected to the individual. You've
Hmm.
got great memories of them in great health.
Hmm.
Then you see them age out. And one of the toughest things to deal with, I mean, physical aging is one thing where they may have knee surgery or have limited mobility, but the early onset Alzheimer's and those kind of things where they don't know who you are and don't recognize you and don't remember conversations.
Yeah.
Like that to me can be one of the most tiring parts and emotionally draining parts of that journey.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
definitely. I've lived with it too, so definitely.
yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's easy to step aside as a child or a grandchild and have a professional come in with an
Yeah.
unbiased, unemotional approach
Hmm.
and just take over the show, for
Yeah.
lack of a better word, and let them deal with it. You just sort of step back and let them manage the whole process for you. Because
Yeah.
it's hard to separate your emotions when you deal with people who you really love.
Yes.
And you've
Yeah.
seen them go from their 50s to their 80s, and then life changed suddenly in front of you. And it's like, what the hell happened here, man?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how things, most people, that's where it happens. And then we got it. We haven't even touched on the whole phrase of the sandwich generation, where a lot
Yeah,
of people,
yep.
you
You
got
got
your
kids in
kids,
the
sometimes you have your parents and your grandparents,
yeah, yeah.
right?
See, you're reading my alleged mind because I don't think it's built in the craft series. But to have you come on and just talk about, most of us are not equipped or taught to be caregivers.
Yes.
No,
The
no.
financial challenge, and I think even bigger, the emotional challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Having to take care of, if you have kids, and also to take care of your parents, and also taking care of yourself,
Yep. Yep. And work.
and all those things.
And
It,
yep.
it can be draining and debilitating.
Yeah.
And God forbid one of your children has some sort of disability in the
There
equation.
you
Like
go
you got
again.
So
screwed, man. Yeah.
yep.
And I've seen it with my own eyes where people they've got their parent or a parent and they've got a child with some sort of disability, whether it's mobility issues or a mental health issue or a learning disability, and you're stuck and you got love for both of these people. Like something's got to give.
Yeah.
And then the toll it takes on marriages.
Yep.
Oh,
Because if you got a young couple trying to navigate their own marriage and their future, then you have this responsibility to your parent now.
Yeah.
Like, have you run into that kind of situation in your travels where you see marriages take a toll because you're trying to deal with their parents who are aging and that's a whole other conversation. And
No,
but have you seen that kind of stuff where the tension between young couples?
yeah. I have a family right now that they own a home. One is in Durham, one's in Hamilton. And they're married, but they've been separated for the last 2 years because the aging mother of the husband lived in St. Catharines. So he lived in the Hamilton home for the last 2 years just to help take care of her. And they haven't had a real marriage. And you can see just sitting down speaking to them, uh, you know, they're burnt out. They want to be back together, and they've got
mhm.
to put this back together of trying to sell this property, still maximize it, and just bring their lives back together as one. It caused separation. You're tired. You're burnt out. When we were going through it, my mother-in-law she had an advanced stage of dementia eventually, and she would have delirium. Sometimes for 24, 48 hours, all night, you're hearing screaming, and she's not here, and she doesn't know where she is. And the next day, I would just have to look at my husband like, okay, I need to sleep because it was burnout. But you understanding that you have to give that space as well to say, okay, this person's burnt out. Let me take over. We're both burnt out. Again, we're back on the topic of we're resistant to our parents going into long-term care, into a nursing home. We want them to stay at home. We've promised for them to stay at home. But there does, and this is from me going through it and being against it, because we brought her back with me saying, do not put her in a nursing home, to the point where two-person lift, like she couldn't even get up. There's a point where you are burnt out and you love the person, but you've exceeded your capabilities, for lack of a better word, unless you can afford to have round the clock care. That's a possibility. What does it cost? So it's very, very, very real conversations with being burnt out. And I think I have a whole different mythology for caregivers as well. on working through the caregivers self-care for themselves and them, I've seen families. I remember one family, when you're talking about a parent with a child, you brought back the memory of a family that I went into, and she wanted care. The mother wanted care while she went to Jamaica on vacation. She was living with a daughter who's had MS, who was probably in her 50s, and the lady had MS since her 20s. And the mother, who was in her 80s, who was a retired nurse, and the father's a retired doctor, were caregivers for their daughter who was bedridden. But let me tell you, the level of care I saw in this home, because they came from a medical professional, she was probably had all the equipment, everything she needed, care coming in better than if she was in a facility. But still, watching these older people who, in this point of their life, they're supposed to be getting cared for, they were caring for this daughter out of their love for her. So, the situations are very real, and people, like, until you go through that door, every house, if you walk, I love driving through neighborhoods. I take the main roads most times because I just like looking at homes. And for me, I always go, it all looks normal from outside, but when you go through that door, you know
Hmm.
what someone is going through. And I've seen it with my
That's
own.
so true. That is so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
Well, Desiree, I want to say thank you for giving us the most important thing in your life, time, and especially with some of the things you're overcoming right now. We really appreciate it, and we don't take it for granted. And we're enjoying this series, and we hope you are, because I know the audience is enjoying it. I know Ray's enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what, for me, I think a lot of people, even younger people, I'm going to talk about the topic of real estate. They choose to get into real estate because of the money or whatever it is. It's an easy entry point. Let's face it, Bill, it's not a difficult thing to get into. I challenge the younger people, especially our youth, that we need more of us taking a seat at the table. By that I mean become brokerage owners, get on the boards, and do something different. There's so many things have been done the same way in real estate, especially traditionally. Do something different where you have a bigger purpose in it and you can really find that purpose within yourself in what you're doing. That's what I did. My story starts with day one, sitting there going, what? 30,000? What was my purpose? Seniors. I've now brought it to this. I've worked for a lot of the top brokerages in the city. And the biggest argument was, well, no, Desiree, just focus on buy, sell, invest. And I'm like, well, what about the seniors? Well, no, they gotta. The so and so want to move yet? No, and they keep going on, and they'll still door knock this door. They'll mark the senior. There's a senior in this house, and they'll just circle back around every 3 months, knocking the door. You ready to sell? You ready to sell? Or I've had seniors who have sold their home with another agent, not downplaying other agents. They've sold, they've got to move with a house full of stuff in the next 2 months on closing, and they have no resources.
Oh boy.
They don't have the resources, so find a bigger purpose. If you do want to get into this, find a bigger purpose, take a seat at the table, and make a true difference in changing the face of it all. A friend of mine took me to one of the what is it, the Harry Jerome Awards, and I think they have an award for the Game Changer Award. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, I want that. And he goes, that's why I brought you here, because I see you being a change maker. And I was like, that is what my goal is. My goal is not a financial goal, because with certain achievements comes that. But I want to be known as a game changer in this game of real estate, especially when it comes to seniors. A quick story example for that as well, because I have my GPA, gentle persuasion approach, which is learning methodologies of how to deal with someone with dementia and working with them. I had a client, we're selling the home, we had her moved out. The mom does have dementia. She was doing what's called sundowning, which is at a certain time they get a little bit more agitated, and we're in the middle of negotiations. And I had said to the agent, 24-hour irrevocable, because we're working with a senior. He came in, wanted to still negotiate. She was having a bad day, and top it up with sundowning. So she reached a point where, like, we're really close to the selling price, which is like within 5 grand. And she's like, nope, nope, nope. I just want what I'm asking for. And her TV wasn't working. It was a hot mess. And the daughter was like, I guess this deal's gone. I said, no, hold on. Let's take a pause. Your mom is going through things right now. Let's just wait till she sleeps until the next day and circle back on this. The agent was being pushy with me, and I told him what's happening from the very beginning with this senior. He was being very pushy. Well, take it or walk away. I said, well, I guess you're going to walk, because I'm dealing with my client's needs right now. It's a senior. He still came back the next day and got the house. I saved the sale. She got a great price for this market, but I also maintained her right to go through whatever she was experiencing that night and come back to a place of logic and reason to get the job done. His attitude would have been pushing his client, pushing, and the more you push, the more resistance you're going to get. So it's just being aware of the things that can happen and being sensitive to it. The sensitivity training is lacking in real estate. So that's my 2 cents for today.
I can attest to that. For my several decades in the mortgage industry, I have dealt with very few realtors when it comes to doing business. We've never had to depend on realtors. I mean, no offense to the industry, but we've never had to depend on real estate professionals. I mean, I've had very great friendships with some realtors, and we've developed even even Stefan has relationship with a realtor I've worked with for the last, we did seminars together for about probably 15 years, at least a decade. But yeah, there has to be a level of sensitivity in order to deal with the older cohort in our society
Yeah.
when doing any kind of business with them. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they've earned the right to take their time to make their decisions at their own pace. I understand that there's timelines and contractual clauses and 24 hours and all that other stuff, but
Yeah.
when you get 85 years old, man, the world can go screw itself.
Yep.
That's my in simple English, man. I do this my way. You know what I mean? If you don't like it, you get moving, man.
Exactly.
So it's good to have someone like yourself who understands that.
Hmm.
Understands. Particularly people who got you deal with dementia and early onset, or even just taking medication. 'Cause medication affects you differently. You get mood
Yes.
swings. You got whatever medication. I mean, I've seen people react because of the medication they're taking, and their mood changes, and
Yeah.
that stuff, right? So
Yeah.
you got to
And
be
I
very
think it's every
cognizant
realm,
of the issues.
not to cut you off, but every realm. I'm speaking from a real estate lens, but in mortgages, in insurance, in every
Yeah,
realm,
oh yeah,
the whole tsunami that's happening with seniors, we need people who are stepping forward and representing on a higher level within their trade to deal with this segment.
yeah, yeah. That's what we do because I mean, like most of the clients I like when I first started out, probably 2/3 of them were older than myself. So fast forward, 30 years, and now Steph is dealing with clients who are as old as his grandmother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he has had the pleasure of being in an office where, so he deals with that. He deals with them with empathy. You
Yeah.
know, you've got, you got 100 phone calls from the client, they want to clarify this one clause in that mortgage contract. You know what I mean? What does this mean? You know what I mean? They go into their Caribbean patois, whether it's Jamaican or Guyanese or Trinidadian. And him coming from a Caribbean household, he understands that the language and and growing up in his own. I mean, he grew up in an intergenerational home himself, right?
Hmm.
Their grandparents lived with them since they were 2, 3 years old. So I mean, he understands that whole dynamic. And
Yeah.
he and his older clients are they got their own love affairs going on, and I don't get involved, but it's good. So,
Yeah.
but I know Dr. Vibe wants to
No, 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 no. I'm just
the
enjoying the
conversation
conversation.
here. I'm gonna let you do
I'm
your thing,
good.
Doctor.
I'm good. The Wallamala says homes look normal from the outside. That's deep. Well, let me add
Oh
on
yeah,
to that. People look normal from the outside.
That whole other conversation.
Whole other conversation.
Whoa.
And Dr. Tachi says, well done. You have to have a sense of humanity when it comes to real estate.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Kids look at it. Sometimes kids look at it. Oh, my mom just needs to throw out all this stuff. It's junk. No, it's not. It's a time capsule. It is a time capsule full of stories.
Mm,
We've got to be sensitive to that. We've got to be
can't
sensitive to
wait
that.
for that book. I want to interview first when that book come out.
Yes, it
That
will
book gonna
be.
be
I'm
hot.
targeting end of the year. I'm targeting end of the year, but I do think it's at a point where it's necessary. And it's a workbook. It's a book, but it's also a workbook that you can work through
okay.
each step as well. So it's not just a story. It's stories intertwined with experiences, intertwined with spirituality. I'm a Christian. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. It still has principles that we can all work through on a human level.
100%.
It's from
Well,
my lens as a Christian woman of working through things, but it can help anybody.
Teach Inspires, good morning. I'm going to encourage you, watch the replay. You missed a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff. So
Yeah.
again, as we close it down, Desiree, there's where you can get a hold of her website, Instagram, Facebook, email. If you want to get a hold of Ray, there is website, Instagram, toll-free phone number. Ryan, there's all his stuff there. Ryan Oneil Knight. I always got to say it's Knight with a KN, not an N. RyanOneilKnight.com. LinkedIn, Ryan Oneil Knight. Instagram at Ryan.Knight99. And email work with me at Ryan Oneil Knight. For me, it's really simple. One link, taplink.cc/The Dr. Vibe Show. And as always, you can watch replays of this epic conversation on the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Afro Caribbean Business Network, and Ryan Oneil Knight on YouTube. We still got comments coming in. You two just got people going. She goes, I'm sure I did. I'll catch the replay. Thanks. And always have to say hello to my man, Roger Dundas. This has been a great conversation. Lots of insights. Thank you, Roger. Thank you so much. Any final words from either one of you before we shut it down?
I will say the top takeaway from this is understand that aging and caregiving needs change over time. There's not one plan. It has to be a working plan that you're able to adapt to as the needs change. So it's something that even if you're doing it as a family on your own, have a schedule to revisit it and reassess it as things progress, because the needs change. What someone can handle now may change what they can handle later on. What's happening with mom or dad now can change with, or auntie. I keep saying mom or dad, but there's also aunties, there's uncles, there's great aunts, there's all of that family. You've got to always just reassess the needs and have a plan. Like, no plan is not a plan. And all these workarounds I'm talking about, I know everybody can think about workarounds they're probably seeing with their loved ones. Reassess that. Next time you go over, look at that and see what the workarounds are and what is the better way of dealing with it as opposed to the workaround, or a safer way of dealing with it.
Teach and Inspire says, very true. Very true. Ray, anything else?
Just thanks for letting me to be here, man. I really enjoyed the conversation. I mean, I'm sorry I missed last month, but I'm looking forward to next month if I get another invitation.
You'll get an invitation. You know that.
But yeah, I mean, this is a great conversation. I mean, as Caribbean and African folks living in large cities where we've moved from into this new cultural dimension, I really commend what Ms. King is doing here. So for those of you who don't follow her on social media, you may want to do that so you can get a lot of the insight that she shares, and call her. I mean, like, pick up the phone and have a conversation. I mean, don't stop hiding behind social media and clicks and likes and Facebook and that nonsense.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone and call Ms. King, and she's a great person to talk to. She knows what she's talking about.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, as one of my mentors in the past says, give good phone. Give good phone. So as always, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions, aim bigger, aim better, aim higher and wider. Love, faith, and respect. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. And if you're not making money, make history. Try to do both and always make it better. God bless. Peace to well. Keep the faith and walk good. And we'll see you soon.
This whole thing of using your business with plant-based products, don't you think your life should reflect that too?
Juke him, Carolyn. Juke him. The family loves us here because they're saying Fitness IQ Can says put a wig on to get in.
Oh God. Oh my God.
Like, the ideas are just coming fast and furious here this morning. What? Okay, look at this. Global Women Ambassador. Good morning. Look forward. Okay.